Halo 2 is without a doubt an absolute masterpiece. I had pretty high expectations going into it after how good the first game was, and yet I was still completely blown away by the game. Not only would I confidently say it improved upon the original in basically every way, but the new stuff added was just so awesome as well. Like being able to play as a member of the Covenant, Vadamir the Arbiter, or being able to dual wield guns or use the Covenant laser sword. If I'm being honest, I expected Halo 2 to be basically the same as the first game. Maybe there'd be a new gun or new enemy, but I could never have expected just how much more they added in the second game. In just the first mission of the game, I already knew I was in for an awesome time, and it only got better as the game went on. The game starts with a cutscene, like the first one did. I immediately noticed how great the cutscene looked with the new graphics, and the cutscene itself was super interesting. In the first game, we never really saw much about the Covenant themselves. For the most part, they were just nameless enemies with ambiguous intentions. But here we get to see the Covenant from their perspective, which was awesome. Specifically, we're seeing the aftermath of the events of the first game. We see the Covenant elite who is in charge of the Halo, Thel Vadamir, being charged for his crime of allowing the sacred Halo to be destroyed. Vadamir is a character I'll talk about more later on. We also get to see the humans' perspective, where Master Chief and Johnson are receiving awards for their work in the first game, as well as Miranda Keyes, daughter of Captain Keyes. The ceremony has to be cut short, however, because Earth is suddenly attacked by a Covenant fleet controlled by one of the prophets named Regret. Finally, you can get to action. And one thing this game added that was just such a great feature was being able to dual wield certain weapons. Dual wielding is always awesome in games, and Halo 2 is no different. Being able to shred enemies with 2 SMGs or use double pistols like Captain Rex was great fun. During just the first mission you see so much new stuff. First the dual wielding, and then a new type of Covenant enemy, these fly things. I hate fighting these guys, for some reason they just instill some sense of urgent panic in me, but nevertheless it's good to have some more enemy variety. You also briefly fight on the outside of the space station with reduced gravity, which was fun, and I liked that this was a one-time thing. You managed to disable the Covenant bomb planted on the Cairo station and return it to the Covenant in a fashion that only Master Chief could do. It wouldn't be Halo without constantly crash landing, and this time it's thanks to this giant Covenant walker that shoots you out the air. This level was so fun to fight through. The environments in the first game were for the most part good, but it was usually limited to labyrinthian corridors or just open outdoors. So being able to fight through the streets of his city was such a cool and fresh experience. I loved also how some of the architecture is the same as we have today, whilst other bits are far more futuristic. You fight through the city to try and reach the Prophet of Regret, and Cortana informs you that the Covenant apparently didn't expect Earth to be inhabited for some reason. Eventually you get the chance to destroy the giant walker by jumping onto the deck from above. Just in time, you manage to chase the Prophet of Regret through their wormhole as the city explodes in a scene that reminded me of the Subspace Emissary. Cutting back to Vadamir, the Prophets decide to give you the role of becoming an Arbiter. Now again, I'll go into what that means later, but for now all you need to know is that the Arbiters are elite warriors, sent on suicide missions to ensure their demise. Your target as the Arbiter is a Covenant heretic located on a base near the Halo from the first game. He's been spreading lies that the great journey of the Prophets is not true. One thing I found interesting is that at this point in the game, it actually is unclear who is right. It's not until you've played more of the game does the full picture become clear. So this Covenant heretic is someone we can learn about in some of the game's various hidden logs. In the first one we see that, unfortunately, the steward of the Halo, Guilty Spark, managed to survive, and it heads towards the heretic's nearby base. Here the Heretic and Guilty Spark exchange information both about the Halos but also the Arbiters. Throughout these multiple conversations, the Heretic learns that the Halos are not sacred at all. They were created by the mysterious precursor species, the Forerunners, in order to eliminate the Flood, and nothing more. So the Prophet's tales about the great journey and how the Halos will lead them to paradise is all completely wrong. For the heretic, this news is almost unbelievable as his whole world is being turned upside down. Shortly after, he starts trying to spread the news about the Prophet's lies and the true nature of the Halo, and this of course is what ends up landing him a target on his head for the newly anointed Arbiter to take out. As mentioned earlier, this whole dynamic is something that you'll only understand later on in the game due to the video logs. When you actually play the missions originally, you're just as in the dark as Vladimir the Arbiter. This mission also blew me away. I would never have thought that we'd actually get to play as a member of the Covenant, never mind someone so instrumental to the whole faction. The Arbiter has a few differences from Master Chief that make it so fun to swap between them across missions. Vladimir has a cloaking device that allows him to turn invisible for a few seconds, allowing him to sneak behind enemies and fire at them, or eliminate them with his laser blade. I was happily surprised too that we get to use these weapons. After being on the receiving end of them a few times in the first game, I was hoping that at some point in the series I'd get to use them myself, and they do not disappoint. The Arbiter also gets Covenant backup. Usually, if I'm being honest, the backup in these games doesn't seem to help that much, but I admit that the Covenant grunts are just so cute, and I'll gladly have one or two of them by my side, even if their lifespan is shorter than the average lemming. On the Heretic's base, I see my old pals from the first game are still around, and so you have to fight through both the Flood and the Heretic forces in order to eventually reach him. This part is just so tragic in hindsight. The Heretic was probably the first Covenant member in a long time to learn the truth of the Halos, and of course in a cruel twist of fate, his path ends up crossing with the Arbiter, who at this point in the game is not ready to listen to the Heretic's message.
Arbiter, I would rather die by your hand than let the Prophets lead me to slaughter. Ask the Oracle about Halo, how they would sacrifice us all for nothing.
More questions? Splendid. I would be happy to assist.
Maybe if the Heretic hadn't fired at the Arbiter, or maybe if Vladimir was just a bit more open to new ideas, then this confrontation might have gone differently. But unfortunately, the Heretic's fate was sealed the second Vladimir was sent after him. Once the Heretic is taken out, Guilty Spark nearly clues in the Arbiter, before being interrupted by Tartarus, the leader of the Brutes. And so the Heretic died knowing full well the truth of the Halos, but being just about unable to share it with anyone. While all that was going on, Master Chief was still after the Prophet of Regret, and his hunt takes him to these ruins on a lake. Chief fights his way through the ruins, which are just full of enemies, including the giant brute enemies. You also get around these ruins via these glass elevator things. I can't decide if they're more similar to the warp pipes from Super Mario 3D World or the great glass elevator from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. A huge Covenant fleet appears just as you're about to reach Regret, and after taking out his guards you manage to eventually get to him and kill him right in his hover chair thing. The Covenant ships above open fire on your location and you're forced to leap into the lake, where tentacles drag you down into the abyss. Cutting back to the Arbiter, we're now after the Icon, which is the key that will activate the Halo. Inside the facility, the mission gets off to an eerie start. The halls and corridors are completely devoid of life, yet countless bodies of your kin litter the floors. The atmosphere is only accentuated by the music in the background, as you go down these slides and open pistons to progress. Eventually you find the likely culprits of the massacre, the laser drones that are protecting the Icon. Eventually you run into more Flood which you have to take out. It seems the Flood are even capable of driving vehicles somehow, which I found pretty amusing. It turns out that Miranda Keyes and Johnson got to the Icon first, and you catch them in the act of retrieving it. However, midway through your battle, a third party arrives, that being Tartarus, the chieftain of the brute species. He tells you he wants to eliminate Vladimir's entire race, the elites, and that the Prophets even ordered Tartarus to kill the Arbiter once he had located the Icon. Vladimir is launched backwards by Tartarus into a seemingly bottomless pit. We see Master Chief being dragged towards some giant fleshy creature underground, called the Gravemind. Soon after they are joined by the Arbiter as well. It seems that this creature lurks deep below the surface of the Halo, and that things seem to end up with it, as we see the recently killed Prophet of Regret here as well. The creature notes that the supposed great journey of the Covenant is no more than the regular use of the Halos, that being wiping out all life to stop the flood. The Arbiter doesn't seem to believe this outwardly, but their actions later as well as prior experiences with the Heretic mean that Vladimir was likely figuring out that the Great Journey was a load of nonsense by now. Regardless, the Gravemind says that the Halo's activation can still be stopped, and he sends Master Chief and the Arbiter to separate places in order to try and locate the icon. As a quick aside, I admit I don't have much explanation as to who or what the Gravemind is. He could be the same as the Flood, with the Gravemind being the origin of the Flood species, or simply an amalgamation of many Flood. In the first game, the Flood that merged with Captain Keyes refers to itself as a group, suggesting the Flood works like some sort of a hive mind. However, the Gravemind notably looks nothing like the Flood we've seen before, being red and fleshy instead of the usual brown. It also seemingly has the ability to open portals of some kind, which really doesn't seem like something the Flood can do. So right now, I'm still unsure as to what the Gravemind is. It seems we'll find out more in the next game, so for right now, I'm just going to move on. Master Chief was sent to the floating station High Charity, which is orbiting the Halo. On High Charity, you see that the Brutes vs Elites fighting has already started, as you go after the two remaining Prophets. As Chief, you carve through countless Covenant forces until you get to a cutscene where you see the Prophet of Truth betray the Prophet of Mercy, and then entrust the icon to Tartarus. Cutting back to the Arbiter, you find yourself still on the Halo, but in a new location, one swarming with Brutes. Thankfully, you get reinforced with a few Brutes as backup at one point, although they don't live for that long. You see Chief finding out that Truth is headed to Earth on board a Forerunner ship that was in the center of High Charity. Cortana says that she'll stay behind and detonate the Halo if Tartarus attempts to activate it. During this mission, you see that a lot of the Covenant forces have been wiped out by the Flood, so they're your main enemy here. Eventually, Chief just about manages to board the Forerunner ship before it explodes, and he shares a parting word with Cortana.
Chief, when you get to Earth, good luck.
After I'm through with Truth.
Don't make a girl a promise, if you know you can't keep it.
Meanwhile, the Arbiter is still on a brute killing rampage, even receiving slightly stronger backup during this mission. The Arbiter tries to explain to Tartarus what the Halo really is, and Guilty Spark even confirms what he's saying, but either Tartarus is too stupid to believe it, or just doesn't want to think he's been betrayed, so he tries to activate the Halo anyway. Of course, this means you have to eliminate him as the Arbiter, in a clash that felt a long time coming. He was pretty strong with his giant hammer thing, but no match for the Arbiter Thel 'Vadamee. In classic Halo fashion, Miranda stops the Halo in the nick of time, stopping the Brute's plan from concluding. They speak to Guilty Spark, who informs them that the Halos can now be all remotely activated via the Ark, which is of course located on Earth. This explains why the Prophet Regret appeared at Earth at the start of the game, and probably why they didn't expect humans to be there as well. The Forerunner ship arrives with Chief still stowed away, and you see the Gravemind speaking to Cortana as the screen fades to black. Now here is maybe the part of the game that shocked me the most. After that cutscene, I was expecting one final mission as the Master Chief. Maybe I go through the Forerunner ship and kill the Prophet of Truth. Maybe I blow up the ship entirely somehow, or even perhaps fight on the ground wherever the Ark is located. But no, I'll have to wait until the next game to find out what happens next. I can only imagine that the nearly 3-year gap between the release of Halo 2 and 3 must have been unbearable to people at the time. Luckily for me, I don't have to wait quite that long. I actually quite liked the ending of Halo 2. Cliffhangers are always going to leave you wanting more, but I think that's fine. I like how it kind of links Halo 2 and 3 together after the first and second game were very separate. Okay, so before I talk about the new gameplay, I want to give my opinion about the current state of the lore. If I'm being honest so far, it seems like humanity is still alive due to pure luck more than anything else. We know that the Covenant is much more technologically advanced than the humans, and seemingly way bigger too. Considering the Covenant's use and somewhat understanding of Forerunner tech, as well as history of combining the different alien species together, it seems they have been active across the galaxy for a lot longer than Earth has. The humans to me appear like the new kids on the block in a way. A log talking about Thel 'Vadamee especially paints a very bleak picture of the war. It says that 'Vadamee has been responsible for over 1 billion total human casualties, and the destruction of 7 different human systems, including Reach. The log even then says, literally, that unless they can somehow kill 'Vadamee, they will lose. I thought this was crazy when I saw this log for the first time. I first assumed that the war between the humans and Covenant was somewhat equal, but this information shows that humanity is lucky to even still exist when against such strong opposition. So in the first game it seems that Master Chief managed to destroy the Halo mostly because it was an unprecedented event for both the Covenant and humanity. Only 'Vadamee's fleet was present at Installation 04, and they likely didn't even consider that one single human ship and one soldier could be so destructive, or even that destroying a Halo was even possible due to their beliefs that the rings were sacred. And then in this game, the Brutes unknowingly massively helped the humans by turning 'Vadamee against the Covenant. At the moment, I think it's unclear how much authority and power 'Vadamee actually has. In the last mission we play as him in, we get Covenant backup, so there must be some that are still loyal to him over the Prophets.
They have shed our brother's blood, and for that they must die.
Or maybe they were just fighting to go against the Brutes. As I said, it's unclear. If 'Vadamee is able to rally his forces to fight for him instead of the Prophets, that could massively aid the war for the humans. Perhaps 'Vadamee as an Arbiter will be more like the Arbiters of old, who were warrior chieftains who led the tribes of the elites. Indeed, 'Vadamee must be popular among the elites due to his background from a respected family, and his tendency to fight personally among the grand assaults. The biggest issue I can see with humanity teaming up with 'Vadamee is how and if 'Vadamee will pay for his crimes against humanity, like obliterating Reach. Maybe he will take the role more of the enemy's enemy and fight against the Covenant on a different front, but of course that's all just speculation. I'll have to wait until the next game to actually find out. My biggest question about the next game, however, is what exactly Truth's plan is. I don't know if the Prophets knew that the Halos weren't sacred or anything, or if they knew what they really do. I'm leaning towards the Prophets knowing the true nature of the Halos, because of how they used the mantle of Arbiter to silence anyone who would question the Great Journey. Surely they wouldn't take such a measure if they believed they didn't have anything to hide. The other problem with the Prophets actually believing in the Great Journey is the origins of this belief. At some point they must have found the Halos or knowledge of them for the first time, and it must have been then that these religious beliefs came into being, if they ever actually existed. I think that the Prophets know that the Great Journey is a load of nonsense, and what the Halos actually do. My theory is that they plan to activate the Halos and then somehow warp outside of the range of the Halos' effects. This would destroy all the Covenant, humans and Flood, and leave the Prophets the only life in that area of space. But if such a thing is true or even possible, is again something I'll have to find out in the next game. As mentioned earlier, I kind of expected Halo 2 to have mostly the same gameplay as the first game. I didn't know that there was a gap of a few years between the releases, but you can really see they used that time well. For starters, the shooting in the game felt a lot better, with more weapons having the option to zoom in, and there being much more variety in weapons. Some of the noteworthy ones were the Covenant beam rifle, which is like a second sniper, and the Covenant carbine, which is like another AR. I really liked these additions as it allowed me to choose exactly what weapons I wanted to use. In the first game there was only one AR, one sniper, etc. So if I didn't like how they felt, I didn't have any other choice. But in Halo 2, there's so many new weapons, sometimes I felt like it was difficult to choose what weapon to use because they were all so fun. The addition of being able to dual wield weapons as well was an ingenious addition which made the weapon selection so much more interesting. In the first game you could carry 2 weapons at all times, and that was it. But in Halo 2, some smaller weapons like SMGs and pistols can be held in just one hand, allowing you to hold a second weapon in the other. The second weapon doesn't even have to be the same, so you could use an SMG in one hand and a pistol in the other, for example, and fire each independently. The way I tended to use the new dual wielding system was by using 2 Covenant rifles. These weapons have tons of ammo but can't be fired continuously without overheating, so having 2 allows you to rapidly alternate which one you fire so neither overheats, and then if the need arises you can fire both at once for quick burst damage. I also like using dual pistols sometimes. I've for some reason always liked using pistols in video games, even though they're usually not that good, but being able to dual wield them felt really fun. And I can't talk about the new weapons without mentioning the laser blade. I was just waiting for when I'd be able to get to use one, and I was so glad to see that they were in this game. You only get about 10 attacks before they run out of charge, but the blade does so much damage just a single strike is often enough. When attacking you also do a kind of lunge as well, so it's pretty easy to land the slashes. And I noticed that you can attack basically instantly when swapping to it, meaning it was a great tool to quickly whip out if the enemy got a bit too close to me. When playing as the Arbiter, I loved using the blade in combination with his invisibility device. This meant I could sneak up behind enemies for backstabs and chain melee kills together, or get above the enemy and finish them with a jumping strike, like something straight out of Assassin's Creed. And thankfully the game introduces a ton of new enemies to use your new arsenal of weapons against. There's the fly enemies, which always made me panic, and of course the brutes, which like to use these charging melee attacks. Halo 2 also had 2 boss fights, something the first game lacked. The first is the tragic fight against the heretic. He creates 2 clones of himself at the start of the fight, and then flies around to make it harder to hit him. The second is against Tartarus, the leader of the brutes. He uses his devastating hammer in combat, so getting close to him is not a good idea. But if you're nimble enough you can still get in a few melee hits. As well, this game solved an issue I had with the first game, that being the sometimes weird way that enemies spawned in. I didn't notice a single time enemies just spawning in behind me or anything like that, which I was thankful for because I did not want to repeat of the Corridor of Doom from the first game. As well as the big changes and additions to the enemies and weapons, there were also tons of small changes that made other systems in the game better. For example, the Banshee now has a barrel roll move, and most vehicles can also enable a speed boost mode which disables the weapon's firing at the cost of more speed. The reinforcements you get as well would act a bit smarter by trying to get close to you in vehicles to pick you up, although sometimes they were a bit overzealous. The graphics in the remaster as well were amazing, especially in the game's many cutscenes. I did see your comments about the graphics in the first game. Some of you said that I should have played the first one with the original graphics, which was interesting, but most I saw said to play this game with the remastered look, so that's what I did. There is only a single negative I can think of with the game, and that's that my beloved sniper rifle was once again pretty absent from the game. I often went out of my way to look for one, but I think I only found 2 or 3 the entire game. I would trade 50 needlers for just one sniper, but whatever. It's more just funny to me at this point. I'm sure Halo 3 will have plenty of them. So that's about all I have to say about Halo 2. Let me reinstate that the game was a masterpiece. It totally amazed me and makes me so excited to play the next games in the series. As always, please leave your thoughts in the comments below. I read every comment and I would love to hear your thoughts on the game. Just please avoid spoilers for future games. Thank you for watching and have a great day.